So here I've got the Xero Shoes Scrambler Low EV, and it's a very minor update from the original Scrambler Low, but I don't have a video for that, so it's worth going through a quick review on this one right now. And the original was a pretty decent shoe for me. I actually managed to run a 100k race in that original shoe, and I had zero foot issues at all. So it kind of proved itself to be a good option. And with the grip that you can get on the outsole, and the more relaxed fit that you get through this upper, it could be an interesting option for those who have that specific foot that works well in Xero shoes. And I'll get into that with the fit. So Xero shoes has a very specific fit. And often it's really good when you first get into barefoot shoes because it doesn't sway too far from the conventional side, but gives you the aspects of barefoot that you really want. So first of all, that's zero drop. So that means it's the same height at the heel as it is at the forefoot. And then it's got a little bit of a wider toe box in there just to help that toe splay. So where it differs from some other options is one, the toe box. So around this big toe specifically, it tapers a little bit too much for some people who have a really wide toe splay. But if you're new to barefoot or if you don't have that super wide toe splay, it can still work fine. And for me, I still managed to get away with Xero shoes, even after being barefoot for quite a few years now. And I still train in Xero shoes because it fits my foot fairly well. The other aspects of Xero shoes that you don't often see from other options are it's a little bit deeper than, say, Vivo Barefoot. And when you pair that with the little bit more width that you get through the midfoot, it actually makes for a relaxed, comfortable fit. And again, if we're comparing them to, say, Vivo Barefoot, it's something that you don't get. Like they usually are quite tight and narrow and shallow through the midfoot in comparison to Xero shoes. So the reason why these usually fit me so well is this heel. So you sit a little bit deeper into that heel cup and it seems to hug that heel very well. But the specific thing that works great is usually around this ankle cuff. If you put a lace lock in there, you can really cinch that in to get a really good heel lock. The lacing threads straight through these straps and tightens all the way round the side of this midfoot, coming in and through and round the heel too. So it makes for a really, really good lockdown. And that's why I usually keep reaching for these in race situations. One, because it's a super comfortable fit, but then also in training situations where I just want to have a known good feeling. And back to this heel, we can see that it's super duper flexible, and this really helps for oddly shaped heels because it's able to adapt to those heels. And for me, I've got quite a bony heel, so it does actually hug round the heel quite nicely. You won't see that if you have a stiffer heel like you see in some options, maybe like some Vivo barefoot shoes or some Ultra shoes, which can be a bit stiffer back there. And sometimes it causes a little bit of slipping. Whereas in this one, nice and flexible, you tighten that down, you get a really good heel lock out of that. It's worth mentioning that this is coming in around true to size for most people. If you do have that wider toe splay, then I would say just go up half size, just so you get a little bit more room around this big toe area. And that's what I've done. This is the 9.5. And while it is very roomy through there, I do feel on the longer runs there, it's going to be a benefit because I'm able to actually splay my toes super, super wide, and there's not going to be any rubbing against the side of the toe. And if you do need any more depth in the shoe, you can run these without the insole in there. So that's about a 3-4 millimeter insole. And you can just get a little bit more depth through here. The footbed there is absolutely fine. You can actually run without any insole in there at all, and you just gain a little bit more room in the shoe. So if we're looking at the feel of this shoe, there's a few aspects which are actually quite interesting, specifically for a barefoot option as well. So if we're looking at that upper, it is quite nice and flexible. It is a little thicker than some others, so it does add a little bit of weight and protection at the same time. So this is where one of the updates has actually happened in the Scrambler to the Scrambler Low EV. It's this upper. So after maybe 400-500 kilometers of running in my original pair, it was actually breaking through this upper material, and that's because it was a weaker kind of fabricy material, which over time, as your forefoot is bending over and over and over again, it just created a little tear. I still ran in them. It still worked absolutely fine, but it was just one weaker point of the shoe. Well, I'm happy to say this EV version has basically updated this upper, and it seems to be a little bit more of a durable, plasticky kind of material. So, one, it will mean it's a bit more secure, and two, it has a bit more durability, especially against gashes or anything that you come against scraping against the side of the shoe, which is a bonus. The other aspect, which is kind of an outstanding point of this shoe, is this outsole. So as you can see, these are smaller, thinner lugs that actually do pretty well in the mud because they're spaced out quite nicely across the whole outsole. I took the original version on a race through the Lake District, which is traditionally quite wet and muddy, and you know what? It did really, really well. So I'd say this is probably one of the first versions of Xero shoes, which is actually quite good for the mud. But that is one thing that you need to be wary of, is don't run these on the road too much, because these lugs are actually quite small and thin, and there isn't much surface area to them. If you do run them on the roads too much, they will wear down quite quickly. So these are definitely trail shoes, and these are mud shoes, so keep them there. The flexibility of this shoe is decent, but I wouldn't say it's the most flexible around. I actually prefer the Mesa Trail 2 for that, because that is an ultimately barefoot flexible shoe, but it didn't have the grip that this had. So we can see that we still get some nice flexibility through the forefoot. Where it does stiffen up a little bit is that torsional flex, and specifically through the heel. I want to say that maybe this is a little bit more flexible than the original, but I'm not sure if that's just how I'm feeling right now. Just note that there is a little bit more stiffness specifically through that heel. And for a trail shoe, this is decent weight. It was coming in around 265 grams for US size 9. And while it's not the lightest weight option, because we've got those durability aspects that we see from one, the Michelin rubber, but then also all the overlays and coming around here, then it does make sense that why we have that weight. If you are looking for a lighter weight option that is a lot lower to the ground, then check out the Mesa Trail 2, because that comes in at around 220 grams, which is very lightweight for a trail shoe. So if we're looking at the durability of this shoe, like I said, this upper has been updated, and well, one thing is it's going to be more durable than the original, which is a really nice thing to see. Otherwise, we see all the overlays coming around this upper here and around this front of the toe box, and all these seem to do a pretty good job in the original, and they don't seem to have changed, and they just protect your feet, but also the shoe structure as well. The outsole, like I said, don't run this too much on the hard surfaces, because it will wear down pretty quickly. But if you keep it to the mud and the trails, then it'll be pretty decent, especially because we have this trusted rubber, or supposed trusted rubber, from Michelin. One thing to be a little wary of is just make sure you get a really good lockdown in here, because if you do have any movement in there, you're probably going to wear through that inner material. But that being said, because of this flexible heel cup and the strapping that comes around the side here from the lacing system, I'm pretty confident that you will get a good lockdown in the end. One area I have known Xero shoes to actually break down in the past is actually this strapping system and the laces that actually are built into this strapping system. And it was a long, long time. I think mine was starting to go to about 800 kilometers before that actually started to fray. They did not break through still, which is kind of amazing, but they did start to fray, and I worried that they would actually break through in the end. But it's just a trade-off. I actually really, really enjoy this type of strapping slash lacing system, and it's something that I wouldn't change because of the feel that you actually get from it. So the Scrambler Low EV is a decent trail shoe as long as it fits your foot. And that is the major thing. So just ensure that you aren't the person with the super wide toe splay, and you are someone with slightly deeper foot. So if you do have a really shallow foot, I'd say maybe go towards a different model or go towards a different brand, maybe like Vivo Barefoot instead. But if that is you, and you're looking for a trail shoe either for hiking or running, then it's going to be a decent option, because you get that versatility of being able to go out into the mud and into the sloppy conditions, but still have a really kind of relaxed and comfortable fit. So you know at the end of the day, you're not actually going to have any type of foot fatigue or any injuries to the foot. So if that's you, it could be a decent option. If you're looking for something a little more lightweight, but the same kind of fit as this, then I'd say the Mesa Trail 2. It's one of my favorite shoes that I've actually run in. Yes, it's very minimal, so you've got to go careful on those rocks and those trails that are maybe a little more rocky and rooty because you will feel absolutely everything. But it's a really interesting barefoot feel. If you've got a slightly wider foot, either wider in the midfoot or wider in the toe box, then I'd suggest you try a Freet option instead. And you can see the real difference here. Just look at that toe box and you can see the width difference between the two. So if you do need that, then go for it. If you don't need that, then you will get a better fit and secureness through a Xero shoe instead. And lastly, if you don't have a super deep foot, so you're someone with a shallow foot where you end up cranking these laces all the way down just to actually get any type of lockdown in the shoe, well, then you need something a little more shallow. And for me, that's usually a Vivo Barefoot option. I've used the Primus Trail in the past, and that's a decent option for you. And otherwise, if you want a little bit more cushion, you could actually go for an Ultra as well. So the Superior is still a really, really good shoe for a shallow foot, but has a little bit of trail aspects to it that allows you to go into the hills. Otherwise, comfortable fit, grippy outsole, updated upper, it's a good choice.